I'm so glad that my friend Nick Friedell could take a couple of minutes to spend some time with me because there is no busier man in the NBA playoffs. Hey, Nick, how are you?
Carolyn, it's great to see you.
So I'm going to try to hit as many series as I can. Let's start with where you are in New York. Give us the latest sort of update on what we know about the health of these rosters, specifically Butler and also Julius Randle injuring himself again. What do we know?
Well, as far as Jimmy's concerned, you know he's going to try to be out there because Carolyn, nobody loves the stage more than Jimmy does. So he will try to attempt to warm up and see how it feels going into game two, but that ankle is killing him. And there is nothing that heals an ankle more than time. That's what Miami and the Heat don't have a lot of right now, but you'd have to figure that it would take a lot for Jimmy to not be on the floor. So I know Tibbs, I know Jimmy, I know they're both expecting him probably to be out there, but we'll have to see. As far as Randall goes, the Knicks have been very cautious in doling out updates. He's gone through some pregame workouts. We'll see how it plays out, but that ankle has given him problems in the Cleveland series. It caused him to miss the end of the regular season. So even if he is able to return and play at a high level off the bat, it's still something that will linger. And the same thing goes for Jimmy and that ankle as well.
There is a significant chunk of time after this game, too, 3 days or so in between. Do you expect that to impact coaching decisions? Are they going to, lay these guys up and hopefully have them get a couple of days rest?
Tom Thibodeau and Eric Spoelstra are all from the same tree. And that tree starts with Pat Riley because Jeff Van Gundy came from that tree as well. Carolyn, I think if both guys are able to be out there and go through their routine, I would think they would try and play. The 3 days certainly helps both teams. It gets that rest and that rehab time and could be very beneficial. But if they're able to play, I can hear Tibbs in my head right now, that voice, if he can go, he'll go. And that's what it's going to turn into. If Randall can be out there, he'll find a way. And Jimmy certainly knows how much this means to that group.
There is that sort of old school mentality. I feel like you're channeling Tibbs as we speak. But this is pretty critical for the Knicks, avoiding heading down to Miami in an 0-2 hole. What do they need to fix? Perimeter shooting was definitely a point of concern in game one. How do they get out of this one with a win?
They went 7 for 34 from beyond the arc in game one. They were getting plenty of open looks. The key is, can you hit them? And Jalen Brunson was the first one to say, it's my fault. I didn't do enough. And it was nice of him to fall on the sword in that regard, Carolyn. But the Knicks just have to be better. They are getting the shots they want. They're just not knocking them down. I think it starts there. But even more, in that Cleveland series, it was a young Cavs team. They just got overwhelmed by the atmosphere at Madison Square Garden and by the intensity of the playoffs. Miami's not going to wilt. Whether Jimmy's out there or not, this is a team that's been through it together. They know what to expect. And I don't think the Knicks were ready at the end of that game for the physicality that Miami had for them. That, to me, is what I'm looking to in game two. How do they respond when a team that is just as mentally tough as they are is really giving them that push down low on the boards late in the game? So it's the shooting from the outside, but it's the intense play inside the paint that I think is going to make the difference late in this one.
Are the Knicks good enough to win this series?
Yes, the Knicks can do it. They have enough. And what's crazy to me is I was in Miami at that first play-in game against Atlanta when the Hawks just dominated the Heat. Carolyn, I didn't think the Heat were going to ever get to this point. And now, after winning game one, there are a lot of people that believe that Miami's just going to roll through the Knicks and head to the Eastern Conference Finals. It shows you how fast things can turn in the postseason, how much confidence plays into all these games. But as far as the Knicks are concerned, they have Jalen Brunson. He's very comfortable in the role he's in. They believe that Randall will be back at some point very soon, maybe as early as game two. But even more, this is a team that isn't wavering even after dropping that first game. They still believe that they can do it, and they have the depth on the roster to prove it.
At its core, New York is a basketball town. When the Knicks are good, there is really nothing better. And you saw that in the fan base, who's just been desperate for a really deep playoff run. If they can't get out of this series against Miami, how much of a moral victory is just winning that first playoff series, showing signs that they may be on a trajectory to eventually making a deeper playoff run?
I think it's gigantic, because not only does it revitalize and re-energize a fan base that was always solid to begin with and always into this team, Carolyn, the other thing it does is it shows all the free agents and all the players that are out there who may be in a situation they don't like on their team. It says, hey, we're here and we're only building and getting better moving forward. So no matter what happens, if the Heat knock them out in the second round here, this is a very successful season for the Knicks, because it's a reminder of how great things are, not only in New York City, but for the NBA when they are good and they are relevant. And to me, it's an advertisement for the rest of the league and saying, hey, if there is a place to be, if there is a place where you will be beloved by everyone moving forward, it's New York City, it's Madison Square Garden as a platform, and it's the Knicks as the team that you need to be on.
How long do you think it could take for them to be actually truly relevant, championship contenders? I mean, is that a season? Is it 2 seasons?
It's a summer of finding the next star that wants out of the current team that they're on. They have all the building blocks in place. The foundation is there. These players, Carolyn, they believe in Thibodeau and that system. Jalen Brunson has been a terrific addition. They've got younger players they can build around with R.J. Barrett and quickly. Randall has played at an all-star level when he's been healthy. What they're missing is just that main superstar. And you and I have covered the NBA long enough to know that those are very hard to find. They are very hard to acquire from some other place. But that's what the Knicks are missing as far as taking that step from being a very good team who can win a playoff series to a team that can get all the way through the East and can compete for a title.
Let's move to the Denver-Phoenix series. What do the Suns need to do to get this back on track?
It's looking rough out there in Phoenix right now. I thought coming into the postseason that the Suns had enough with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker at the top. Carolyn, that depth just isn't there. And you can have all the star power in the world, and that is always the biggest key. But when you're trying to win a championship and you're trying to beat an incredibly talented team with the 2-time MVP in Jokic in Denver, you need other pieces that you can turn to that are going to help. The Suns just don't appear to have it. I don't think this series is over because I've always believed in Kevin Durant being able to carry a team through a postseason series with just how unbelievable he is. But if Chris Paul isn't healthy and you're not sure where else you're going to get that balance from in the lineup, it doesn't look good unless Durant and or Booker say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go off for 50 in these next couple games and try to even up this series.
Do you get the sense that Chris Paul is I don't even know how to put it. I mean, obviously less than healthy, but that this could be a problem moving forward?
A big problem, because Carolyn, every time in these last few postseasons, not only have we seen a diminished version from what Chris Paul is now from what he used to be years ago, and that happens. Father Time is undefeated, as Charles Barkley always says. But Chris Paul just cannot stay healthy. There's always a reason for some kind of breakdown as the playoffs continue on. And this has been an ongoing theme for the Suns. It's why it would really scare me if you're that new ownership group in Phoenix. It always felt like, hey, everything is built for this team to win right now. You made the deal for Durant. You gave up Mikal Bridges and a bunch of the depth that made that team so good over the last few years. Now is the time to do it. Chris Paul is not getting any younger. I think it is a big problem, not only in the short term, but as they try to move ahead and retool in the summer.
I can't imagine how difficult this is. And look, the series isn't over, but for Suns fans to have Kevin Durant come in and to watch how easily he's able to assimilate, even when he came in, he was still dealing with injury. And when he gets on the floor, it's just kind of magical because he's Kevin Durant. But for Paul personally, I mean, to have the door open and have a superstar of that caliber come in and you think to yourself, all right, we've now got the pieces in place. We can make a legitimate title run. I might be able to do this. And to be befallen by injury again and have this series get out of hand quickly again. I mean, how disappointing do you think that is?
Hugely. And I can tell you, having been out in Phoenix and around this Suns team over the last month as the playoffs were getting ready to begin, there was such an excitement level, not only because they almost won the finals a couple of years ago without KD, but now that they had KD, Carolyn, Chris Paul was looking at this as, hey, this is my probably my last great chance. This is a guy who is one of the best players of all time. He's ready to win. He knows how to win. And Devin Booker, at a much younger age, was thinking the same thing. The pieces are there. For Paul to get hurt again and to not be able to play at the level that we know he's capable of, it's a huge letdown, not only for Paul, but for that organization, because this was the bet. The bet was, hey, we're pushing all our chips in to take Kevin Durant from the Nets because we believe we can do it right now. And it's looking like, unless there is a serious turn in this series, that that's just not going to be able to be the case.
I laughed when Kevin Durant said, yeah, we're not surprised that Denver is this good. They're the top seed for a reason. And I understand what the question sort of was, but why do you think that Denver doesn't get the respect or hasn't gotten the respect so far this season with how well they've done? Is it just a matter of not being one of those kind of star-studded traditional franchises?
If we're being really honest, Carolyn, it's because Jokic is not an interesting personality. He plays basketball, he goes home. That works for him. It clearly works for the Nuggets. But if you're trying to draw interest and garner support, not only locally in Denver, but across the NBA, people want to hear about stars. They want to feel like they know them a little bit. Jokic is just a hell of a basketball player, but he doesn't offer up as much publicly. Another key part is that Denver fan base is very loyal, the group that they do have, but this is a team that for years has struggled to get their games on TV all the time. There's just not as much interest in that team as there are in some of these marquee franchises around the league. The way you earn that support and the way you earn that respect is to go out and win. That's all they can do, and it's what they've struggled to accomplish in these last few years in the postseason, getting into the bigger games and winning them. But the reason that team doesn't have the following that some of these other teams do, it starts with Jokic in being just a basketball player in an era where a lot of fans want more than that.
You bring up such a great point, because if you think about any other player with a little bit of that sort of gravitas or star power being in a position to potentially three-peat as an MVP in the league, you would be paying so much more attention to it or hearing so much more about it if it was a Giannis or even a Joel Embiid. And yet, that doesn't seem to apply to a player that is so incredibly talented unless you're crazy about the league. With MVP being selected tonight, is it Joel Embiid in your mind? Who do you think out of these three kind of cast of recurring characters?
It's Embiid. Carolyn, it's Embiid. When you have the push that Joel put on publicly in doing some of the interviews that he's done, but in those last couple of weeks having the performances that he did, there is a voter fatigue of voting for Jokic over and over and over, even though the numbers are very deserving as they have been the last few years. But what Embiid was able to do in those last couple of weeks in that final push, on top of the fact that I think there was a lot of, Jordan didn't accomplish some of this stuff, so now Jokic is going to do this. I think that weighed into some voters' minds, and I would be truly stunned if it's not Embiid who's named the winner later tonight.
Sixers surprising some people against Boston thanks to a sort of retro performance from James Harden. But while we're talking about Embiid, do you see him being available at all in this series, beyond this series? What's the latest with him health-wise?
I would think he would be back at some point. Carolyn, this is a guy who has not only had an MVP season, but he's been everything that team has needed him to be over and over. It goes back to coming full circle with Paul and the Suns. Embiid knows that this is his moment. This might be one of his better chances that he's going to have at this stage of his career to make that push for the group. So I don't know if he returns in game 2, but it would shock me if we don't see him at some point in this series.
If he's not available, can James Harden do enough to get out of this series against Boston?
No. And Carolyn, I say this as somebody who went on ESPN right before game 1 and straight up laughed at the idea that James Harden without Embiid could turn back the clock and get this team through this series and win 4 games. He was awesome in game 1. He totally controlled everything that the Sixers needed him to do, and it looked like the Harden that we had seen in Houston for all those years. I just don't believe at this stage in his career that he'll be able to do that night after night against a very talented Celtics team that will make adjustments so that he's not the guy going off. The issue for me with Philly is they don't have the rebounding down low without Joel, and they don't have the supporting cast that they're going to need if it's just Harden, Maxey, and a bunch of periphery guys. They have a chance to make this certainly a competitive series, and they're going to try like hell behind Doc Rivers to give everything they have to keep winning games. I don't believe, though, even after he put on the performance that he did in game 1, that Harden can do it like that 3 more times.
What is the adjustment for Boston to take him out of the mix? Where does that change come from? Who does that burden fall on?
I think that you're going to see even more Marcus Smart. We saw him certainly have those rotations, but I would think Marcus is going to be all over Harden moving forward. Carolyn, the other key is Boston can switch, but I don't know if it served them very well at times in game 1. They're switching all over the place, but Harden is finding a way either to hit the shots that he wasn't hitting throughout much of this year or make the right pass. Joe Mazzulla and his staff have to go back and watch that tape and say, what matchups are going to allow us to have the most success defensively, especially when we know that that's really the main option that Philly has. Maxey can hurt him, but Harden is a former MVP. He used to be a superstar in this league, and he wants to remind everybody, and people like me, that he can still do it at an incredibly high level. So to me, it's going to mean a lot of Smart just following Harden around in game 2 and beyond if Boston wants to really limit him much more than they did the other night.
I remember talking to Dan Shaughnessy midway through the season, and he told me, this is well before Milwaukee got knocked out of the playoffs early, obviously, that it feels like this is the year for the Celtics to win a championship. Now, granted, you're talking about a guy who lives in Boston and maybe begrudgingly covers the Celtics or is critical of the Celtics, whatever the case may be. A lot of people in that town really felt like this was finally the chance for Tatum to win. Do you feel like that is very much in play, or do you see something else?
No, I do. I think all the signs point to this being the Celtics year. Now, can you remember a year in the postseason, especially in the beginning, when there's been this much parity? Not only did Milwaukee get knocked out, but you're seeing upsets all over the place. The Lakers get through the Grizzlies. You're seeing teams that in years past wouldn't have had much of a chance based on the seedings find a way through. We spent some of the conversation discussing the Heat and the Knicks. That Heat team was pretty much dead going into the playoffs. Giannis gets hurt in that first game, and it changes everything. I say all that to say nothing would be that much of a stunner given what we've already seen, but the Celtics are just deeper than everybody else. Tatum has that ability and the star power to lift everybody else up around him. If they didn't turn the ball over so much in those last few games against the Warriors in the finals, Carolyn, they've already got a title with this group. So I think that this is Boston's time. I still think they win this series. Frankly, I still think they win the whole thing. The issue for them, on top of fixing how do you slow down Harden and how do you tweak things defensively, is their focus just needs to be better. This team looks like a group that feels like we're so good we can step on the floor sometimes and just go through the motions and win. That does not play in the postseason. It has to be a constant effort all the time, and it's what Boston is really struggling with in this series and in this iteration of this group. They just need to step up the mental game more than anything else.
Do you think Harden maybe took some offense to the notion that they might have said to themselves, all right, no Embiid, we're going to sleepwalk a little bit here? And if that is the case, was game one enough of a wake-up call for this squad to say, hey, wake up, you can't take games off in the postseason, to your exact point?
As far as Harden goes, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. It wasn't just me, but Carolyn, I know for sure that video of me cracking up and said, I don't think Harden can do it 4 times. That got seen. So I don't want to take all the credit for Philly winning that first game, but there's no doubt when you have proud players, and I covered Harden in Brooklyn, he's an unbelievable player. He's going to the Hall of Fame. When you have any guy who has played at that level, it's always in there somewhere. I certainly didn't expect to see it at that level in game one. He deserves all that credit. And as far as the Celtics part of it goes, yeah, it should wake him up, because it's a reminder that none of this stuff in the postseason comes easy. It's never as easy as, well, this team doesn't have the MVP and this team doesn't have the pieces that maybe some other groups do. They can still beat you. And in order to get a championship, in order to earn that, you have to go through all the hurdles that come with it. So I don't see, again, Boston falling that flat again. I think it was a perfect time for this to happen. But the fact that it happened at all, and the fact that Harden made it happen, is a credit not only to him, but in the belief that the Sixers have that they can get this series where they need it to be, get Embiid back potentially, and then go from there.
All right, let's end with Lakers Warriors, because I've kept you for too long already. But I was surprised to see Golden State get past Sacramento, actually, because even though this might be sort of the last time that we see the Thompson, Steph, Draymond trio, I didn't view them as a team that was quite as talented as the iterations that we've seen in the past. And I thought Sacramento was a really good team. Now the NBA is salivating over this dream matchup with LA and Golden State. How do you view this series between the two?
This is where I come down on all of this. I'm not betting against Steph Curry. I mean, in the end, that is the key. It's the reason, Carolyn, why I didn't think that the Kings could win a Game 7. Steph has the belief not only in himself, but the confidence he has within permeates up and down that locker room and within the organization. They believe they're going to win every night because they have that guy on the floor. And that is a powerful thing in pro sports, to have the type of player who makes everybody else around them go, no matter how bad things were in the regular season, everything will also be okay. So I'm still taking the Warriors in this series. I'm taking them because not only do they have Steph and Draymond and Clay is ready for the Bay versus LA series, but I think they're just deeper. And what would scare me as a Laker fan is, you know that LeBron's still great. You know that Anthony Davis, when he's on the floor and healthy, is unbelievably good as well. When they have a day in between each game, I don't think that bodes well for a team that is still led by veteran guys who have dealt with a lot of injury concerns. So the Warriors have home court advantage. They're feeling good and healthy and refreshed after getting Andrew Wiggins back to start the postseason. I think everything is going in their favor right now. And the trump card of all is that they have Steph Curry. And he, to me, is playing the best basketball that he has in his entire career.
Imagine with the road struggles that they've had, home court advantage is probably big for them as well. It's interesting to hear you describe Steph's mentality and how that is contagious up and down the floor with everybody else. It sounds like a Michael Jordan type mentality where I'm gonna be me and I'm gonna lift everybody up. Do you think that comparison is fair? And does LeBron have that same sort of ability? Obviously, he's got the mentality. He's one of the greatest of all time, whatever it is. But I don't know necessarily from the outside looking in that he's the sort of guy that makes everybody else believe it too. Is he? And if so, if not, this question is becoming long and confusing. Where do you put Steph's sort of ability to bring everybody along compared to some of the other greats?
Well, Carolyn, let's start with the Steph and MJ part, because I think it is a very fair comparison. I think that because I've talked to Steve Kerr enough, who played with Michael Jordan, who knows that those two guys have the ability to pull everybody else up around them. And that is the most rarefied air that there can be, any comparison to MJ. But in Steph's case on this particular topic, it's warranted because it's the truth. Steph has 4 titles. He's working on his 5th right now. But his game elevates everybody else. The belief he has makes everybody else on the floor very calm in the moments where things might be looking bleak. As far as the LeBron part, though, I think it's not only a fair question at this moment of his career, but it's why you would lean towards Steph Curry in any series. Carolyn, LeBron's still awesome, but I don't think anybody is looking at LeBron at this stage and saying, well, he might be able to win a game or 2, but is he going to be able to carry everybody through 7 games? That is a huge question mark, and it's not a question that is felt as harshly as maybe the Steph part of this is. I think the wear and tear on LeBron's body is piling up. The minutes have piled up, and I just think Steph is at a completely different level than he was during all those Warriors, Cavs battles for all those finals years ago. So to me, when you're trying to put all of this in context, yes, Steph and MJ are right on the same level as far as how they're lifting up the group. But the reason that you're taking Steph over LeBron is because he's got a few less years and tread on the tires, but he has that push right now that LeBron used to have, but I don't think he's got any more as far as being able to lift a group that long.
Should fans be savoring Steph versus LeBron here as potentially maybe the last time that we see something like this?
Yes, absolutely. I don't believe that this is a legacy series for either one of those guys, in the sense that Steph wins, he got another one over LeBron one more time, or LeBron wins, he just totally put that conversation away. To me, both of these guys' legacies are secure. Nothing's going to change. If you believe that Steph was a better player or LeBron was a better player, whatever. The difference is you're playing for history. In Steph's case, if you can lead this team to their 5th title, and you can do it as the lead guy after winning your first Finals MVP last year, that's just going to augment what he's already accomplished this far down the line over the last 14 seasons. With LeBron, if you knock out Steph Curry and the Warriors, and then you lead this Lakers team that was 2-10 to start the season, that so many people had written off completely, into the Western Conference Finals, everybody is going to look even more and go, is he inching up closer to MJ? It's possible, but even if the Warriors were to win, Carolyn, and even if the Lakers were able to win this series, I don't think that changes the larger conversation about where these guys are viewed in the legacy of the game.
Will the rivalry between the two be viewed, with a little bit of time removed, as one of the greatest rivalries in the game?
It never felt to me as if it was a rivalry between LeBron and Steph. And I say that because part of the issue is that in the middle of those Cavs Warriors battle royales in the finals, who appeared? Kevin Durant. So in that regard, the LeBron-Steph games, while they were always really something to behold, it was never Magic versus Bird or any of those great back and forths between two individuals. It was LeBron carrying whatever team he was on against Steph and Kevin and the Warriors. I'd add this, though, for a little context. I remember interviewing Steph Curry at Davidson when he was still in college. LeBron came to his game when he was a junior at Davidson, and there is a relationship that is built now over almost 2 decades. The push between both those guys to outdo the other one, the respect's always been there, but I think for them internally, this is going to mean a little extra because of the length of that relationship and how many different ups and downs it's had over the course of time. So for fans, I don't think LeBron versus Steph was ever as huge as it could be, but in this moment for two all-time greats who are both going to the Hall of Fame, I think there's a little added juice for each of them.
All right, we'll leave it there because my office lights, they've literally turned the lights down. It's curtains. Nick Friedell of ESPN, you're the best. We've been friends for a long time from afar. I know we don't see each other as much as we'd like, but I have just watched your career go up, 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 up. And it is such a pleasure to check in with you, to read your stuff, to follow you. You're something of a lightning rod, which I think is great. And you just do a fantastic job. So thanks for the time.
Well, Carolyn, I appreciate it, but it cuts both ways. Every time I would see you up on the TV, I would be yelling, yes, Orlando, we made it. So yes. It's been awesome to follow everything you've done as well, and it's cool to be with you.